Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am super thrilled to have my new breasty survivor friend, Kia Lee, on my show. So Kia is a stage 3 breast cancer survivor, author, speaker, and survivorship mentor dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional and psychological realities of life during and after cancer. She is the author of Lighthouse: Surviving Narcissistic Abuse and Lighthouse: The Path Through Cancer, The Power of Becoming, and is passionate about helping women feel less alone as they navigate the often unspoken after of survivorship. Well, welcome to the show, Kia. Thank you so much for being here because we need this. How are you doing
Thank you.
today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on and responding to my LinkedIn. And,
Yes.
now we're friends for life. You can't get rid of me.
Yes, we are. You know, when I was diagnosed, one of my friends told me that I was about to enter the sisterhood of all sisterhoods. And she was right. I have met so many amazing people, didn't want to be on this path, but here we are.
Right.
And now we're in this advocacy world and making friends and helping others. And I'm just thrilled that now you're part of my world. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank
Usually,
you.
when I interview survivors, I always ask this question. And
Mm.
sometimes people really have to think about it because it is such a deep question. I would love to know who Kia was before breast cancer even came into your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a good and interesting question because we never really know the answer to that until you are on this journey. So the pre-cancer me, high achieving, supporting executives, ultra high net worth individuals, running around, putting everyone first, the people pleaser, the fixer. If you had a problem, you call me and I would just get it done, like no question. And I prided myself on that. I loved it. I rooted my 15-year career in that. And I wasn't so much aware of all of the sacrifices that I was making for, other people and
Mhm.
sacrificing myself. And I definitely thought I was, healed and completely unaware of like old childhood wounds that were partially healed or maybe not even. So I was just basically, in a way, running on autopilot and doing what I thought the check boxes said I should be
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah. Gosh, kind of sounds a lot like my life. I mean, so
Yeah.
many things come out of a cancer diagnosis like this. All of our childhood memories, things that we
Mhm,
didn't
mhm.
realize. I don't, I was 54 when I was diagnosed, and
Okay.
I feel like I'm just really going through a lot of things and memories and
Yeah.
realizations and things like that. So, yeah. So when were you diagnosed? What was your diagnosis? Tell us
Yeah.
all the things about that.
Sure. So I was diagnosed in October of 2023. Ironic that it's October, right? I was 38 years old, stage 3 ER positive, HER2 negative, and it was IDC, and it had spread to one lymph node. And we knew that going in because part of the reason why I went and got checked was because it was swollen. And at first I thought it was like an underarm, like ingrown hair. And then I'm like, maybe it's a cyst. I was like, this doesn't feel right. But never in my mind did I think breast cancer because it for sure was an ingrown hair. And then I noticed a little lump when I was at the gym on the bench. And I'm like, that's not normal. However, I have dense breast tissue. So, and it would disappear, it would ebb and flow. So eventually I go to the PCP and she kind of freaks out. And I'm kind of like, I think you're overreacting. I'm pretty sure it's just a cyst or something clogged. Like, this is normal. And I go to a diagnostic center, get the imaging for the ultrasound, and she goes, And I'm immediately like, please elaborate on what this means. She goes, I think we need to do a mammogram. So at that point, I'm like, oh crap, this is not the direction. My plan, right? Because we all have plans, was to come in, get the ultrasound, them tell me it's nothing, drain this or do that. And I go on my merry way. Now I'm sitting, half undressed, texting my one girlfriend who had been through this in 2020, asking, does a mammogram hurt? And she's like, it's uncomfortable, but what's going on? And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'll keep you posted. Because I didn't really want anyone to worry because I'm like, this isn't going to be anything. So I do the mammogram. It was painful because obviously there was a tumor there and they're pressing down on it. And I start crying and it's just like all coming out. And the fear really stuck in me, right? It was almost like I just knew. And when I left, it was almost like a ghost was leaving, like above my body, and I was just walking out. I like knew. And the whole issue of it was also like during like a holiday weekend. So it's like all of these things are waiting to find out if there's going to be time. So long story short, the results come back. The PCP person calls me and is freaking out, a little unprofessional in my opinion, but it's all coming from where we are in the moment. She says, it looks like breast cancer. What are you going to do? And I said, time out. I said, is there something that you know that I don't know? And she says, well, what do you mean? I said, you're saying the word breast cancer and no one has spoken to me about anything. I have not read the results. At this point in time, I didn't have the My Chart on my phone, probably, thank God. And, she backpedals and it's like, well, what did they tell you? I said, well, nothing. And you're telling me this. So I immediately kind of just like fired her because I didn't need that energy, right? Like it is what it was. Like you're all over the place, lady. And where I was coming from, like I'm already scared. So I don't want my leaders to also be scared. So I called a really good friend who had really good connections at MSK. And I took all of my things and I started my care there. And they are incredible. And they redid all the testing. They did the biopsy and it was 100% stage 3 breast cancer. Yeah.
Wow. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that with your doctor. I
Drama.
would have been like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it's interesting how some doctors don't really know how to say things, especially when it's on the phone. Like, did she say, are you sitting down? Or, you know what I mean? Nothing. I've had people. I've had people tell me that, the doctor called me and said, and I was like in the middle of Walmart, shopping. And they're like, well, you have breast cancer and we need to get you in. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Right.
Please just ask me to sit down in one of the bean bags at Walmart at least.
Yeah, or ask me, am I somewhere like safe?
Exactly.
Like
I know that when I was told, one of our friends is a breast radiologist and he's the one that looked at the scans after I had gone in. He wasn't there at the time at the breast center, but when he called me, I was camping. I was sitting with friends around the camp and I knew that the call was coming in. And he also knew that it was very important for me to be, with people that were supportive and everything. Yeah. So let's go back real quickly and talk about how you went in. Luckily you went in because you noticed that something was different. Right. Sometimes when women go in and they say, hey, this feels weird. Usually the doctor will be like, oh, you're 38. It's just hormones. It's nothing different. Well, but it kind of happened the opposite for you. She was very
For
concerned and
sure.
you're like, "What are
Yes.
you talking about?"
Right. I mean, and also in hindsight, that's fantastic. And it
Yeah.
is a lot of women are dismissed, right? And,
Yes.
we just have to keep pushing, and if they say no, find another doctor, right? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to live with it. The
Mhm.
doctors and everyone else go home and they live their lives. So, as much as we don't sometimes want the answer because we want to continue to live in the I'm fine, I don't have anything wrong world, it's so important so we can begin to treat it and begin to understand how to do the best we can to fix it, right? And the
Mhm.
more we delay that, the more things can progress and be less helpful and less responsive to the current treatments.
Right, right. And also the mere fact that you were 38, this is a space that I work in very heavily, even though I'm in my 50s. I
Mhm.
just remember that when I was diagnosed, I knew a lot about breast cancer, but it was
Mhm.
astounding how much I didn't know about breast cancer when I was
Yeah,
actually diagnosed. And of course,
yeah,
that's when the major learning started, right?
correct. You
And
get the PhD.
yeah. And then women in their 20s and 30s, and I do interview a ton of people
Mhm.
who are survivors who were diagnosed in their 20s and 30s. And this
Yeah,
is very important for us to know because
yeah.
they don't know most of those
Correct.
people, they don't know anything
Right.
at all.
Right.
They've never had a mammogram. They've never,
Right.
had any kind of lump or whatever, or any
Mhm.
kind of breast health education. So
Sure.
when you were diagnosed, I would imagine it was pretty overwhelming, like most of us have this
100%.
overwhelming. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Tell us about that moment that you were diagnosed and then you went into this whole, wow, I'm getting my PhD now
yeah.
in breast cancer.
Yeah, for me, it was very overwhelming. So, my friend is a surgeon, and when I got the final papers, I sent it to her and she called and she says, I'm really sorry. It is cancer. And I just dropped to the floor and I just started crying. She was
Yeah.
talking, but I was just like I was underwater. I didn't hear anything because it's just like, what does that mean? And my first thing is, am I going to die? Right? Because everything you hear, you think cancer or
Mhm.
death. Cancer is never synonymous with a good time or, anything like that. So, none of that is true. But in the moment, being in my 30s, this wasn't supposed to be a part of my plan. If I was to get cancer, it should be when I'm like 80 or 90 years old. Like that's the mentality that, most of us have, right? And I think rightfully so because
Mhm.
the statistics are now insanely changing, not to be that, but, it just at least growing up, that's how it felt, whenever you heard
Mhm.
of someone, they were usually older, and I don't know if that's because most people hid it, because for me, I didn't really wanna tell anyone. I wanted everyone to treat me normally, I didn't want special treatment, and I thought about not telling my mom, and then I realized, that's just not gonna go well, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
need support.
Yeah.
So I was just beside myself. I couldn't believe it. I would ebb and flow from crying for hours to journaling as if I could manifest the facts away. And none of that was logical, but it was the only thing I could do to process, what was happening. And I didn't know what was happening. Was I going to have chemo? Was I going to have surgery? And then in the end, was I going to die? And my whole process and why I wrote the book was facing my own mortality has just changed me in a way that the best words I can put together are that book, but it just changes you, and that's why none of us are ever the same after we know that. Because obviously I was stage 3, so I had cancer for quite some
Mhm.
time. It wasn't just it popped up, and I was living and so happy and all those things. So, so I said, the only difference that changed was my knowledge of it. So I was
Mhm.
trying to get myself to still be the positive, happy person and, say, okay, well, what's the plan? Let's get to it. So I ebbed and flowed between between crying and then between let's get this.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, that's one of the reasons I asked that first question because I think it's really important for people who have never been diagnosed or friends who have a friend who has gone through it or is going through it. I think it's really important for people to know how this affects us. And
Yeah.
obviously people don't know until they know, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
But in order for friends and family members to be able to support us,
Right.
they don't have to fully understand what we're going
Right.
through, but what they can do is
Mhm.
empathize with us and be able to understand that we are going through a huge change,
Huge.
and that is an
Huge.
emotional and a physical change.
Yes.
And that we need to make sure that we are understanding why Kia isn't necessarily happy go lucky today, or
Right.
when Kia got finished with her treatment and she had all the
Mhm.
things and she was no evidence of disease, why it is that we don't just get back to this normal person that
Yeah.
we were before, because that's unrealistic. So, would I want to go back? I am Jamie at the core,
Mhm.
but my life has been enhanced in a way, oddly enough,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm in a
Yeah.
space where I'm educating and advocating for people who are
Mhm.
getting breast cancer right now. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that's my perspective anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I definitely agree. I'm not the same person mentally, physically, spiritually, energetically, and I do love who I am, and I do think that she's a better version of myself. Do I wish sometimes that the trauma didn't have to be so harsh to get me to that point?
Yeah.
Definitely, but diamonds are made under pressure, right? And I just look at all of us going through this. We're diamonds and we come out better. We come out, with a lesson and wisdom and knowledge that not everyone gets to have. And sometimes I wish that I could go back to the innocence and the not knowing. But
Mhm.
then when I think about that, I'm like, life is pretty hollow in those moments. And now I just feel and see everything at a depth that is beautiful. And, I am thankful for it in some weird way to say it like that, but it's just like the gift of cancer to me was that, right? So,
Right. And if we were to go back to that naive, clueless person about,
mhm.
lots of things, it wouldn't change anything. Like when you get cancer, you would still be this super overwhelmed. Like for
Correct.
me, I wish so much I would have known much more about the signs of breast cancer, how to advocate for
Mhm.
myself, my risk factors. I wish I would have
Right.
known all of that,
Yeah.
because when I was diagnosed, I feel like I wouldn't have been as overwhelmed with
Yes.
all of this information coming at me a million miles a moment.
And also I wish if I could go back, I can't go back, but I can tell anyone listening, I would take my time because a lot of everything is rooted in fear and they
Yeah.
use the fear to push the pace. And sometimes we're just not ready to make a decision, right? And chemo and radiation and surgery, all of these decisions, fertility decisions are all so personal and are life changing, right? So like for me, I was told on a Friday that I had to decide if I wanted to freeze my eggs by Monday. And I was
Oh.
like, that's not helpful. So in the
Mhm.
end, I ended up not doing it because in my mind, taking the hormones to harvest my eggs could push me, in my opinion, to stage 4. And then I'm chasing something off of a cliff for no real good reason, and letting my ego drive it. But, I just really would tell women to pause and take your time and really think through all of the processes and not just how it's going to affect you now, but how it's going to affect you in 5 to 10 years, because quality of life is a thing. This is happening to younger patients. It's one thing if you're diagnosed at 80 and they're like, okay, well, the side effect in 10 years, and you go, okay, well, 80, 90, I'll roll the dice. But if you're diagnosed in your 30 or 25 and something significant can affect you in 10 years, that's still a pretty big part of your
Mhm.
life. And I think not
Yes.
enough conversations are happening with like the treatment and the quality of life outcome thereafter.
Yeah, thank you. Because you are not the first person who's actually said that. I've even had doctors say that. Like, look,
Right.
sometimes doctors or surgeons will make it sound like it needs to happen right now. Like you need to
Mhm.
make the decision immediately. And a lot of times it's not life threatening that you have
Right.
to make that decision right then and there. So I would
Right.
fully agree with slowing down,
Yeah.
look at the pros and cons, get a second opinion and a
Always.
third if you
Yeah.
need to.
If you need
That's
to.
what
Yeah.
I did. That's what I did with my breast surgery. I
Mhm.
was going to get my breast surgery here in Reno, and I ultimately decided not to because I didn't want to go through the whole implant thing.
Yeah.
I had like 3 friends that told me throughout my cancer journey about
Mhm.
this deep flap surgery.
Mhm.
And so I did a bunch of research on that at the end of my chemo and ended up going to New Orleans and getting that. But I was glad that I had that time
Time.
to think
Mhm.
about the kind of surgery I
Mhm.
wanted to have. So, yeah.
Right.
And I got
Yeah.
more opinions,
Right. And it's
so,
helpful. And sometimes too many
yeah.
opinions are too much, and, like, we
Yeah.
have to gauge that, but, like, knowledge is power, right? Because
Mhm.
otherwise you're just trusting the person that's in front of you, which they could be great, they could be knowledgeable, but they're not the ones that have to live with the outcome.
Right, right. And the surgeon here in Reno isn't she's the top surgeon here in Reno. She's excellent.
Yeah.
I just didn't want if I would have gotten my mastectomy from her, I would have
Mhm.
gone to this plastic surgeon that she uses to get the implants. And we don't have anyone here in our
Mhm.
area that
Mhm.
does flap surgeries, at
Got
least
it.
very skilled
Right.
surgeons. So it wasn't her as a surgeon. She was amazing, but I wanted to go from mastectomy to reconstruction immediately. So
Yeah,
it was the best choice for me. But anyway,
exactly.
for you though, I would love to know what your treatments were,
Yeah.
what you went through your
Yeah.
whole journey there.
Yeah. So, I was diagnosed in October of 23. I started chemotherapy at the end of October, which was ACT chemo, which is like the
Mhm.
Red Devil, and I can't pronounce the
Yes.
names; they're too long. And I also like didn't focus too much on the drugs because if I learned too much about it, I wasn't going to do it. So I did AC, which was every other week for 4, and then the plan was Taxol every other week for 4, or it might have been every week for 4. So essentially, it was going to be like 8 treatments and done. And that's what I wanted. Because in my mind, breast cancer, we're going to wrap this up in 6 months,
Y- Yep.
right? Because we're checklists,
Yeah.
we're this, we're that, and we're on it, and we're going to be through the door. So fast forward to my second Taxol infusion. I had an allergic reaction, and I think it was most scary for my mother who had to witness it. I think it's the body kind of shutting down, and the beautiful thing about that is the insurance requires women to have an allergic reaction to this drug, which is more common than not, instead of just approving the Abraxane, which has a better reaction, is the Chanel of chemos of this type of chemo. And the difference is basically the formula that delivers the medicine, or, the drugs. And it was crazy to me when I learned that. It's like, so someone behind a desk decided that somebody who's already in enough trauma needs to endure an allergic reaction. And I'm not talking about like I had a nut and now I'm like, "Ugh, I can't." Like, we're talking shaking, chills,
Mhm.
everyone running into the room. My coloration, according to my mom, and her face was just, that's probably the most traumatizing, like I said, for my mother. And
Mhm.
then to just be sent home and then, "Oh, come back next week. The insurance will approve the Abraxane by then." And I'm thinking, I'm injecting myself with stuff that's killing me. Great.
Yeah.
And I continued on. I did the Abraxane for 12 weeks every week, which was a shorter duration. There was no steroids involved, and it was just one and done. Then I had my unilateral mastectomy. They removed my right breast. The left one was fine. So I will say the entire time leading up into this point, the plan was a lumpectomy. The purpose of the chemo was to shrink the tumor. And
Mhm.
then I had the post chemo MRI, which revealed a little piece of cancer by the nipple and then other cells changing. And the breast surgeon, who is incredible, Dr. Sakini, I trust him. He knows what he's
Mhm.
doing, world renowned. And he said, "We have to take the whole thing." And I said,
Yeah.
"Okay. What about the other one?" He said, "It's perfect. I wouldn't touch it." I was like, "Okay, great. Let's do it." And I literally left the country for like 5 days because I just needed to be alone on a beach. And I had to process that, right? Because I didn't sign up for breast augmentation so I could come out and have my double D's and look, how I want to look. Like, this to me was an amputation, and
Mhm.
there was no guaranteed outcome. Because you hear all the stories. Sometimes it doesn't take, or the skin gets infected. There's a myriad of things that can go wrong. And you're just praying and hoping that yours works out the best for you. So, about a month after chemo, I had the surgery. It went perfectly. They inserted the expander in. So I had one boob and then like what was flat. And each
Mhm.
week they, filled it up. And he went a little larger on the side because we knew I was likely going to have radiation. And if I wasn't, he could, take it down. I
Right.
then spent the next 5 months fighting with Blue Cross Blue Shield to have proton radiation because I didn't want traditional. I wanted proton because that was an option for me. And it literally was 5 months of fighting, appealing, them saying no, going back and forth, when finally it got all the way to the state and they were forced to cover it. And I was very happy about that. So I did the proton radiation, 33 treatments on the chest wall where the lymph nodes were. And then the last five were like, I guess, the lymph nodes on the sternum. Um, and that was fine. I really was just tired, and towards the end, it was became more frequent with less breaks, so it just really was, like, red. So,
Mhm.
but I was like, "I know I'm towards the end."
Mhm.
And then from there, you wait 6 months for the skin to heal, and then I had my exchange surgery where they take out the radiated in expander, they take out the scar tissue and replace it with, what I have now, the prosthetic, in on my right side. And that was the easiest, right? The
Mhm.
mastectomy even wasn't bad. I had the drains were the most annoying part. And the fact
Yeah.
that I didn't sleep elevated enough. One night I like sunk too far in and it was painful to get me up. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
Those drains are real fun.
they are so
I had
weird. Like they're just
I
hanging outside of you, inside of you. And you're like, no
Yep.
big deal.
I had 4 of them. I had one on
Yeah.
each side of the boobs and then down below on my abdomen area, and my husband was really good at
Yeah.
draining them
Right,
every
and
day.
then you need the help because someone needs to, like,
Yes.
milk them, like, you can't really do it on your own, and it's
No.
just it's, like, crazy, all these things that you learn that you hope like, you were like, "Wait, this exists?" And,
Yeah.
through my treatment, I went to the gym, I walked, I did the Stairmaster, I did anything that, like, made me happy, and chemo was hard, for sure. I lost all my cardio, and I was very fit before all of this, I would work out, like, insanely. So it was really hard to like walk to the corner. I live in New York City and like need to sit down, So I'm happy it's all over. I will say that. And it definitely took longer than I imagined. So October of 2023 and the finish line of the exchange was June of 25, which still had its own that you have to heal from that. And they took fat from my inner thighs to fill in areas to make it look better. And that
Oh,
hurt.
cool.
Yeah, that hurt
Oh,
more.
I'm
That hurt
sure.
more than
I
anything else.
mean, super cool, but oh yeah, that hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "Who signs up for this cosmetically? It's crazy."
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
all in all, I'm super grateful and thankful for my path. I don't think looking back I would change anything. Everything that I chose for me and what was right for me in the time. So I don't have any regrets.
Good. I'm so glad to hear. And you're all good today.
Yeah, knock on wood, finding some wood. We are
I
all
know.
good.
Find real wood, Kia.
Right, exactly, yes.
None of
2 years
that.
out, no evidence of disease, and, I've really just changed my entire life around it
Yeah.
because I'm not doing any of that again, and, just really being conscious and aware of the choices that I'm making, the environments that I'm in, what I'm eating, what I'm putting on my body, where I am in time and space, and, because before I normalized stress, and now I actually can't even handle it. I came back into the world and I was a high executive assistant and I wasn't able to like manage and cope with what I was able to before. Like someone could throw 15 things at me and I'd get it. And now I'm like, no,
Ye
you give me the
Same.
top. Yeah, you give me the top three and I will get them. I will let you know when I can get them to you. Like
Right. Good for you.
yeah, can't do it.
Boundaries.
Yes, boundaries, right. Yes. And
I
so
was a
many people,
teacher for teacher for 20 years. So People who don't know teaching, they just don't know what everything that we do. It's like
Yeah.
multitasking like no one's business. And
Mhm.
now I'm retired, and
Uh-huh.
there are things that I'm like, how did I ever juggle
Right.
all of that stuff? So,
Correct.
so that's who you were. Let's talk about your
Yeah.
survivorship. What are
Sure.
you doing in your
Yeah.
survivorship?
Yeah. In my survivorship, I discovered that I needed a purpose in my life and that I could no longer participate in a life that had no true meaning. So I quit my career of 15 years of being an executive assistant. Scary because like I
Mhm.
spent all of my time climbing that ladder and working for the types of people that, I could only dream of, supporting. And to walk away from that was scary. But for me, I need to wake up and know that I'm helping other women. And, now it's like coaching, but I call it more mentoring because coaching feels like it's not the right thing. Women
Right.
through their treatment, through their after, a lot of young women are diagnosed and they're like WTF. And there's a huge gap of education, mental support, for all women in general, especially the farther out we go, and especially right after when you're like, "You're normal, go back to life." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"What life?"
Yeah.
So yeah, so I created this program and I'm actually working on my 3rd book that's going to literally deliver it to everyone because I'm like, how can I help the masses? I can't coach everyone, but I can write a book that allows everyone access to do it themselves. So, just because it's more than just changing what you eat, how you sleep, and who you're around. It's really looking into the systems that we signed up for subconsciously. It's addressing the wounds because I don't think cancer is any one thing. I don't think it
Right.
has anything to do with just having a gene or just doing X, Y, or Z. I think it's a compilation of the perfect horrible storm of all the
Mhm.
things, right? So I guide women down that path. I'm not a guru. I do not have the answers. I am a lighthouse. And that is
Mhm.
the whole purpose of the name that I chose for my books and everything. I lead by example and I just point people back to the light that's inside of them because ultimately we have to do the work ourselves. There's no
Mhm.
one that can do the journal entries, that can do the reflection. Like you have to. And it's so empowering to put a name to things and to choose something differently and to put yourself first. Cause a lot of women, we just don't do that. We're not
Right.
conditioned to do that. That's not how the system is set up. We're set up to give, give, and give no matter what. And we can't pour from an empty cup. It's so
Mhm.
cliche, but we really should only be giving from the overflow, you know?
When I was first diagnosed, I reached out to this guy named Eddie Enever, and he is in Australia. And I was in such a deep, overwhelmed, dark place when I was first diagnosed. I was just
Mhm.
devastated.
Yeah.
And I remember in the middle of the night, I was scrolling around on Facebook, just looking
Mhm.
for answers. And I ran across
Yeah.
Eddie, and Eddie is a 3-time cancer survivor.
Mhm.
And he set out to help people as well. And he got on a Zoom with me, and he literally helped drag me out of that dark space and gave
Yes.
me hope. And he
Mhm.
had that same term where he said, it is a perfect storm. People
Yeah.
wonder what caused it. Did I cause my
Yeah.
own cancer? He said, everyone has cancer cells, and it
Correct.
is this perfect storm that
Mhm.
happens. And so just being mindful of everything that we are doing and
Right.
being healthy mind, body, and soul is so
Right.
important. So interesting that you
Right.
said that. I love that you wrote a book. I was diagnosed about a year and a few months before you. It
Okay.
was June of 2022. And I remember February of 2023 when you were in the midst of all your stuff. I was in that same space. I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, I felt lost. I needed to
Mhm.
find a purpose. And I had started a podcast before I retired for
Mhm.
educators. I was going to support
Okay.
educators in my retirement. People were like, well, why don't you write a book? And I said, well, I don't want to write a book because, first of all, I love writing. I was a writing
Mhm.
teacher, but I didn't want to write a book. I said, but I do
Mhm.
know how to podcast. I do know
Right.
how to have conversations with people. That is something I'm so good at. hence Test Those Breasts was born. And I've been
Yeah.
podcasting ever since. And,
Love it. Yeah.
it has been such a good release, a good
Mhm.
therapy for me.
Yes. And
Therapy, it
others.
turns out, for others. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Right.
I like to amplify, the voices of people like
Mhm.
you in what you went through to help people get through it, and then what they're doing in their survivorship. And I
Right.
find that so many survivors are doing something in the
Something.
cancer
Right.
space to help others. So tell us about your program. You and I so align in so many different ways. I just launched an initiative here in Reno in Northern
Uh-huh.
Nevada, the My Best Act,
Mhm.
and it's all about educating younger people
Yes.
between
Mhm.
the ages of 18 and really 39, because that's right before standard
Yeah.
of care for screening.
Right.
And because there is a huge gap. So tell us all
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah. So what I was trying to figure out is I was like, there's so many people in this space and everyone offers what they offer and everything is great. There's no one that I'm like, oh, that's crap. Because there's something for everybody, right? Like who I am may not resonate with a group of people, but there's a person that reaches them. So I figured out my voice was just leading people home. And I always felt that was my purpose even before cancer. I just didn't know what that looked like. And cancer was the thing that ignited that and opened that mission for me. And essentially, I have sessions, with women, and everybody's different. Some people just need a person to call, a person to ask their questions to. And it's purely transactional in the sense of they have questions, I have answers, and they will disappear and then they come back when they need it. Then I have others where we meet once a week and we go through. I have reflection prompts. We're digging in and we're doing the work. We're understanding who was I before cancer, and we're addressing the issues that were there, because oftentimes the diagnosis only sheds light onto things that were always there, right? I was always a people pleaser, just cancer made me realize that. So cancer is the portal to the work that needs to be done and has to be done, like, and for me it's cancer, for someone else it may be a divorce, for someone else it may be the loss of a loved one. I don't think that this is singular to
Mhm.
cancer. Trauma is trauma, and we all have plenty of it, and hopefully most of us just have one thing or two things in our lifetime to get through. And for me, the diagnosis, I really sat with myself and I said, what have I contributed to the world? Right. Like, I know that I'm a good person. I know that those around me that know me love me and that I'm there for them. I said, but what have I done bigger than myself? And then that's what spawned, the second book. And that's what keeps encouraging me to keep expanding. And whenever I get like the download in my head of like, I need to do this, I just act on it, because we all are going to pass away at some point for whatever reason. And I want something that outlasts me so that in 100 years, someone can reach for something in a moment of need and
Yeah.
I'm there with them. And it's not so much I'm there with them like an ego. I'm there with them because I took the time to figure it out and make it digestible, for others, because not everybody has the capacity to do that. Not everybody wants to do that, right? I have
Mhm.
some friends that are diagnosed. They don't ever want to talk about it again. It's
Mhm.
a black hole in their life. They will not acknowledge
Mhm.
it. They will not come on a podcast. They don't want to talk about it. But I feel like for me, I'm meant to be here to lead people home. That's like the only way that I know how to say it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I so appreciate that. I so admire that. And, not everyone can or again really wants to
Right.
be in this space. And we're lucky to have enough people out there who do. And I did have a good support system, and I was able to connect with a really good therapist that I still see to this day. So I'm very grateful for that.
Right.
But I love that there are lighthouses out there, instead of like going through and just tumbling through it on your own with friends that don't
Right.
even understand what you're going through,
Right.
and family
Right.
members that don't understand, right?
Right.
So, well, I
Yeah.
think this is just fabulous, and I know that we will have your information in the show notes, how to get a hold of you, links to your
Yeah.
books,
Thank
and
you.
all of that. I just really
Yeah.
appreciate your joining us and sharing your story. It's so powerful. What is a big piece of advice that you have for someone who's never been diagnosed?
I guess just my biggest piece of life advice would be just be present with ourselves and to listen to the inner voice, right? There's always something that's leading you or guiding you to somewhere better and or different than where you are. And that we don't have to choose what is told to us that we have to choose, right? I think that a lot of us are chasing the American dream, so to speak. And we believe that if we just follow this checklist, everything's going to work out and everything's going to be perfect. And we're living in a rom com. And it may be that way and feel that way from 18 to 24, 25, but then you start to realize that that's not how life works at all. And I think that the sooner we realize that and sooner we actually tap into ourselves, what our true gifts are and what we really actually want to do, I think the world will be a better place as opposed to just people operating from a place of disconnect and just chasing material things because material things don't matter. Nothing material helped me through any of this process, right? And can't take any of it with you, you know? So I'm not saying material things aren't nice because surely they are, but there's more
Mhm.
to living than things.
Oh gosh, what a great piece of advice. There are so many people who just wrap themselves up in all of that, and it is
Mhm.
just not reality. And I like that you said, we're not taking any of this stuff with us.
We're not. We're not.
When we
Yeah.
are gone, there's nothing coming with us. And it's such a great perspective. So thank you for that.
Thank
Well,
you.
this has been amazing. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I would just like to know if you have anything you'd like to say before we wrap up today.
Sure. I just want to say to anyone going through it, wherever you are in your journey, you're not alone. Your people out there exist. There are communities, whether it's me, Jamie, anyone, reach out and just say hello and let everyone else take the rest from you. You don't have to navigate anything alone. You don't have to suffer alone. And a lot of women and people are just suffering and needlessly, right? Because the resources are there, the people are there. You're not alone. Reach out.
I love that because a lot of people think that, oh, I don't want to burden other people.
Right.
First of all, you're not burdening people. I mean, there are
Correct.
people who are less helpful than others, but
Correct.
there is a whole entire community out there,
Yes.
whether they're in your own city or in another state or in another country. The
Right.
help is out there and you do not have to go through it alone. And
Right.
I just think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
people who are capable of holding you up. Like, you may have family members that can't hold you up, and that's fine, but there is a community out there that is ready to hold your hand and walk you through it.
Yes, and you probably have a lot of people who reach out to you and say, "Hey, Kia, I have a friend that just was diagnosed with breast cancer. Do you mind speaking with her,
Yeah,
on the phone or something?" I mean, it happens to me all
all the
the
time.
time. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm helping someone who lives in another part of our state who's
Mhm.
going through what sounds like the same treatment that you went through,
Yeah.
as far as the red devil.
Right.
She's gone through the first one. She hasn't, I don't think she's had an allergic reaction, but it sounds like the same. And so I'm helping her through that, giving her advice on some books to read or
Absolutely.
whatever. So, yeah. So, well, thank you for everything that you do. I'm so thrilled that you reached out to me on LinkedIn and that we're now connected.
Yes.
And
Forever.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. And to my audience, I appreciate your joining us again on this episode. And we will see you on the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.